Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session where we will be discussing the engineering design team experience in UBC Engineering. Please feel free to use the Q&A function under the session tab on the right side of your screen to ask any questions that you may have for the current students present here. My name is Yashi Prakash, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a third-year student in the program of Environmental Engineering at the Vancouver campus. Today, I will help facilitate this session, and we have amongst us students from UBC Sailbot, UBC Formula Electric, OK Motorsports, Innovate Design Sustain IDS team. Let's start with a round of introductions. Joe, would you like to go first?
Hey everyone, my name is Joe, and I'm the captain of UBC Formula Electric on the Vancouver campus. My pronouns are he, him, and design teams to me are just a great way to kind of get outside of the classroom experience and really work with like-minded people in those sorts of ways.
That's great. Ella, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. So my name is Ella. I'm from UBC Sailbot. I'm the mechanical team lead. My pronouns are she, her, and my favorite thing about my design team is testing and getting able to get some hands-on experience and really apply my learning from the classroom to other projects.
Great. Curtis, would you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Curtis Zell. My pronouns are he, him. I'm in the mechanical engineering program at UBC Okanagan in my final semester, and I'm also president of the sustainability focused design club IDS, or Innovate Design Sustain. My favorite thing about design clubs in this experience, and it's allowed me to make a real impact in the community and do some hands-on projects before graduating. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Julia, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm a fourth year mechanical engineering student at the Okanagan campus. I'm the mechanical technical director of the OK Motorsports Club, which is our Formula SAE club. And I would say my favorite thing about the club would be being able to kind of get that hands-on experience and being able to apply all the things that I learn in all of my courses to actual hands-on work experience. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for that amazing round of introductions. We will now be moving on to questions for the team representatives. I don't see any questions in the chat right now. So attendees, as a reminder, you can use the Q&A function on the right side of your screen under the Sessions tab to ask your questions in this session. So if anyone wants to answer any question, they can just unmute themselves. Or if nobody wants to answer, I can just say someone's name and you can answer the question. So what is your favorite project in your team? Joe, would you like to go ahead and answer that?
Sure. I think one thing our team does fairly uniquely among a lot of the other Formula Electric teams on North America is our electrical system, which consists of 11 different circuit boards, which are all completely made by undergraduate students. We remake those every single year with different improvements based on the competition changes. And it covers a lot of different areas from, power electronics to signal processing. It runs a bunch of different processors together, networking. So just all those different layers of complexity to me is one of kind of my favorite parts of what our team does.
That's amazing. Thank you for your insights. Does anyone else want to tell their favorite project in their team? Julia, do you want to talk about it?
Sure, I can. As a Formula student team, we do a lot of crazy engineering things. One project I think that I could probably highlight is probably our aluminum casted uprights. So our upright is on the corner of our vehicle assembly. Normally they're very heavily machined, and it takes a lot of intricate machining process. So we kind of switched to 3D printed design and then made a sand mold out of that, and then was able to use our school's casting lab to create aluminum uprights. So that was a pretty cool project to see and be a part of. So.
Wow, that actually sounds really good. We have a question in the chat. So, someone is asking, how do you join a design team?
It depends a little bit on the team, and I'll speak for certainly most of the teams on the Vancouver campus here. In the majority of cases, they have a recruiting session where the big one is in the beginning of September, right at the start of the school year. And some teams also recruit on a rolling basis or at the start of the January term. But in general, you're going to be looking at an application, which will involve probably a few technical questions, a couple of soft skills questions, why do you want to join the team, stuff like that. And then for most teams, some will just accept or deny based off that application. And for a lot of teams like my own, we also do an interview round, which is not something to stress about. It's not as serious as a job, but just a few minutes to kind of gauge your problem solving skills and things like that. So yeah, kind of a application interview, and that all happens right around kind of the first few weeks of September. So at least for the Vancouver campus, keep an eye out for us on Imagine Day. We'll have almost every single team out there, and you can get all the links and websites and contact information to get to our applications from there.
Thank you for sharing that. Just to follow up, can students with no design experience still join the team and learn the necessary skills? And are there any specific areas of experience or expertise that teams necessarily look for?
Absolutely. It's open to anyone, and that even includes, we don't just recruit engineers, we recruit from all different faculties and disciplines. So really whatever experience you're coming with is sufficient. At least for my team, we hire more first years than any other year rank, just because there's so much more we can teach them in that many years of membership. So we love all experience levels, and especially those who are just really coming with an excitement to learn, is how I would say it. And we'll teach whatever we need you to know. We are there to teach you. On top of that, I'll add, what do we look for? Rather than specific prior engineering knowledge, that's great, absolutely. But really, problem solving skills. We'd love to hear about what projects you've done, how you've spent your spare time to date, and how you want to bring your interest to our respective teams.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights. I see that a few more people have joined in. So I want to remind everybody that you can use the Q&A function on the right side of your screen under the Sessions tab to ask your questions in this session. Also, for the next question, Curtis, I would like you to answer that. So what does the time commitment look like if you were to join a team? Because engineering schedules are anyway really busy. So how do students usually manage that?
Well, it really depends on the time of year. It kind of goes up and down during I don't know, maintenance periods, I guess, where there's not a lot of deliverables. It can be pretty chill, like around 5-10 hours a week, something like that. And then there's people that dedicate more as well. It's a lot of it is you get what you put in as well. And then during competition, deliverables, there's some tight timelines sometimes. So then it can go up to 20 hours a week, depending on the person. But we really try to match our students with where they're at in terms of their schedule too. Like we try not to schedule events like around midterm season, exam season as much as possible. We try to accommodate for that because we know it's a challenge for sure. And that's another thing about the mentorship as well, as the upper year students can kind of share those time management skills with the newer students. And, we try to help with that process as much as we can. Classes always comes first though. That's kind of our motto with that.
So is the time commitment naturally reduced during the midterm and the final season then?
Usually, yeah, unless there's been a couple unfortunate matchups with competition deliverables and midterms and whatnot, but yeah, we never try to push people further than they can handle. Like we're part of clubs and this is supposed to be fun too. So we're all just trying to make it as best we can, and we accommodate exams whenever possible as well. So.
Okay. So we have another question in the chat. What budgets do design teams have? Does anybody want to take that question?
I could speak a little bit on our stuff here. So it really depends year by year and like what projects we have on the go. There's a few different funding avenues we have available to us. There's the Professional Activities Fund, which is funded through the School of Engineering here on the Okanagan campus, at least. I'm not I can't comment on how it works in Vancouver. And then we also have funding through the SUO that we can apply for, and Engineers and Geoscientists BC also have project like student team initiative funds as well. So it really depends. The most we have received for a project so far has been about 18,000 for a solar bench project. I know some other clubs on campus could be higher. Maybe Julia could comment on that.
Yeah, I definitely think it does depend year to year, and I think it depends on the scope of the competitions and the targets that you're trying to hit. Obviously, Joe might have some info as well. Building a race car is not cheap, which is really cool that we get to kind of be a part of this and put our time in and not get paid for it, but also don't have to pay to build these parts and to get this experience. So yeah, we definitely do have a lot larger of a budget than that. I think this year our development of our first EV car is about 88,000, which is quite a lot. But we do spend a lot of time breaking it down, and there's a lot of sponsorship outreach and applications that have to go into that. So.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Also, I have some questions related to co-op. So, have any of you done co-op? So, do you guys know if your experience in your design team helped you secure a co-op job, or helped you work more easily or efficiently? Does anyone want to take that question?
I can start, and I would say, the answer is 100%. I would say of the number of interview questions I've gotten and the number of technical applications I've had to fill out, on the order of 95% of what they want to know about is design team. At the last one, I just got finished with an internship at the Tesla Motor Company, and going back there this summer and working there, they didn't even care about school projects. They just wanted to know about the race car I'd been building and all the skills I'd learned there. So 100% design teams are the fast track to really, really cool jobs.
Yeah, I would follow up with that as well. I'm currently on a co-op with Tesla in California, and I was scoped out by my LinkedIn from a internship recruiter based on my FSE experience. So the recruiters definitely look for that, and it definitely is something that you can put on your resume that stands out from the normal school projects and stuff like that, and it shows kind of bigger initiative and commitment to your education.
So just to follow up on that, do you think that your experience in design teams needs to be completely similar to what you're going to be doing in your co-op job for it to be relevant? Or do you think any different experience that you would have in a design team can also help in a different job?
I can speak to this. I would definitely say that your design team that you're in does not have to relate to the job that you're going for. You learn so many transferable skills through design team experience. So as you progress through a design team, you might move into a leadership position where you're working on project management and working in teams where you learn a lot of really good skills for any kind of jobs that you're going for. And just to bring it back to that critical thinking and problem solving skills, that will take you to pretty much any job that you want. Very, very critical. I don't know if anyone else wants to add on to that.
Thank you so much, Ella.
Yeah, I could also add on to that. Myself, I've had a very kind of diverse range of experiences, never in one field really. Our club has been pretty build project heavy so far. So it's a lot of civil engineering, mechanical, like HVAC design, structural engineering, that kind of thing. But I think the skills you learn in a club or on a design team could be applicable to any industry. Like Ella said, like it's a lot of like the soft skills and just like teamwork, like knowing how to work in a team and like with a very complicated project. It's difficult to break that up into its parts and like actually get it done. So even just being a part of that team and taking a project from an idea to actually building something, I think is a really valuable skill that carries over in so many industries.
So just to follow up on your question, what did the design process look like for your project?
So it's kind of evolved over the past few years. We're a pretty new club. We're design team. We're classified as a club and a design team, depending on which organization you ask. So I keep switching that there. The process has changed quite a bit the past 3 years. We were only 3 years old, our club. So a lot of it has been just learning this past few years, I guess. Now that we've had a couple of projects under our belt, though, it always starts with defining the problem and understanding the context of why you're doing what you're doing. Like, an idea can be great, but if it's not solving a problem that people have or that exists, it's, difficult to make sure your design achieves all its objectives too. So really identify, understand the problem, iterative design and testing. Depends on the club, but some of us have more like shop facilities than others, but it's always a bit of iterative testing. And then, settling on a final design and then comparing that to your objectives, making sure everything lines up.
And how does your design team space look like? Do you use any labs or machine shops or anything like that?
Sure. So on UBC Vancouver, there's a bit of it kind of depends on the team, depending on how big your project is, how big your team is. For the automotive teams, we have about 350 square feet of dedicated space, which, a few tables, space for the car, bit of storage. And then we kind of use department-specific facilities as required. So mechanical engineering and engineering physics both have machine shops. We'll go there, use the water jet cutters, the mills, the lathes, all those sorts of things. We have some community space upstairs with 3D printers and routers and other hand tools and things like that. So as far as dedicated space, it's, 350 square feet, which is really enough for probably a quarter of the team, 20 people. And then we just kind of fan out into community spaces as required from there.
Wow, that sounds amazing. We do have another question in the chat. Design teams seem pretty time intensive. Is it correct to assume that most students only join one team? Do any of you want to answer that question?
I can take it. In general, yes, it is just a one team thing. You certainly can join multiple teams, and I've seen it time to time. Usually more with upper years who are taking a lighter course load and have more free time. There's definitely nothing stopping you. I would caution against it though, just because if you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to really sink your teeth into any design projects. And so you're going to miss out on those finer points that you might have gotten if you put all that time into one team, whichever that team might be.
So, do you usually see people sticking around? So, if you usually get someone in your team who's in their first year, do they usually stick around in the team and stay when they're in their second year or third year also?
That's going to depend a lot on the team. For my team, we've made huge strides in this over the last 4 years. So when I joined with 20 people and 2 of them stayed for the second year. Now we have about 85, 90% retention. So we're quite happy with that. So if people want to stay and have put in the time to, earn a spot, then absolutely we see year over year retention. I'm going on 5 years on the team now, and really happy with it. So yeah, it is. I mean, it's of course your discretion. And if you switch to another team, having that first team on your resume absolutely helps you get that new team. But yeah, usually we see very strong retention.
While we're on this topic, let's talk about team dynamics. So, how many first year or 4 year plus students are there in your teams, and what is the approximate gender ratio? So, I feel like all of you can take that question one after the other. So, Joe, you can start.
Sure. Let's see. You're putting me on the spot a little bit on numbers, but roughly, I want to say 30% first year, something like that. Our gender ratio is probably, I think, 75-25 right now. Maybe 70-30, something like that. Fourth years, we've got, or fourth and above is probably, it's pretty small, 10%. That's largely a function of COVID, 4 years ago, making recruitment very difficult. So definitely a younger skew. But yeah, that's kind of the makeup of our team.
Julia, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, so again, probably hard for me as well to place numbers. I've been on co-op for the past 8 months, so I haven't seen all of the first years this year. But we do really like having them come in, fresh brains. We love teaching them. And so, yeah, I would probably say about the same, maybe about 30% new members. 4-year plus, I believe we have quite a few. I would probably say maybe about 30% as well would be 4th year plus. And then we are working really hard on pushing for more females in executive roles and just overall in general. I think when I joined the team, it was only me and one other girl, and now we've seen quite a few. I would probably say about the same, maybe 25% females, which is really great to see.
Yeah, that's really nice. So I think in the chat, people are very interested to know about balancing of time between design teams and course loads. So even though Joe answered that question, and he suggested that people stick to one, have you, any of you guys experienced switching up design teams or having yourself immersed in multiple extracurricular activities? So how did that work out for you? Who wants to take that question?
Could probably comment on that. I haven't been a part of multiple at one time myself. I do tend to take on too much, though. I am a TA this term in classes and club and everything, so I have a bit of experience with that. It's tough to really dedicate yourself, I think, kind of like Joe said, to really make an impact on a project unless you kind of put yourself to one thing. I feel like you'd be spread too thin with multiple design teams for sure. And it depends on the design team as well. Like some of them require more of a commitment, like with especially the race car teams. I know it's a pretty big commitment for those. And then there's other clubs too that are very new or very entry level, or it's kind of more of a hobby thing to you. So I think it depends. Like maybe if it's a lighter load kind of club or a club where it's, maybe they just host events and you go once a week or something like that, maybe you'd be able to do more at once. But if it's a really technical design heavy club, it'd be tough to manage more than one for sure.
Thank you so much, Curtis, for sharing that. Julia, did you want to add anything to that?
I think what Joe said earlier was pretty on par. It maybe is possible to join multiple. I think for first years, what I would probably suggest is pick your interested ones, go and talk to them. We have club day at UBC Okanagan, and just kind of talk to everyone. Maybe show up to the general meetings for each one for the first month, and just kind of dip your feet in and see which one interests you. But I really do think that picking one and sticking to it, at least for a semester or for the whole year, it doesn't mean that down the line you have to stick with that one. But you would probably get most out of it and keep your sanity by sticking with one.
Thank you for sharing that information, Julia. As we can see that we have some new attendees, I want to take a moment to do a quick round of introductions again. I would like to ask all team members to briefly introduce themselves once more. So, Ella, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ella. I'm the mechanical team lead for UBC Sailbot. My pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, my name is Julia. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a 4th year engineering student at the UBC Okanagan campus, and I am the mechanical technical director for OK Motorsports, which is our Formula SAE team.
Okay, Joe?
Hey everyone, I'm Joe. I am the captain of UBC Formula Electric on the Vancouver campus. I am a 5th year in engineering physics, and my pronouns are he, him.
Curtis?
Hi everyone, I'm Curtis. I'm president of Innovate Design Sustain. We're a sustainability-focused engineering design club. I'm at the UBC Okanagan campus. I'm in my 4th year of mechanical engineering.
Thank you so much, everyone, for introducing yourselves. It's wonderful to have so many new attendees joining us today. Just another quick reminder, you can use the Q&A function on the right side of your screen under the Sessions tab to ask your questions during this session. So we move on to another question. How do design teams and clubs at UBC encourage creativity and innovation in their projects? So, how do you come up with different ideas and how you want to proceed with that? So, how does that look like? Or anyone can take that question.
I can take this one. Yeah, so I guess one of the ways, it's kind of inherent to our club too, but since we're sustainability focused, we tend to optimize all of our projects in terms of the 3 pillars of sustainability. So making sure it's economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable, and socially sustainable. So making, reducing negative impacts, maximizing positive impacts in those areas. And when you're optimizing towards criteria that's I don't know, as multifaceted as that, it can definitely lead to more innovation. So, when you're trying to satisfy very strict guidelines for environmental requirements, for example, that can lead to some pretty innovative solutions, just finding a new way to do something that people haven't tried before. Another thing we do just throughout the design process, when we're in the brainstorming stages of something, we really try not to limit our scope too quickly. And really just let the out-of-the-box ideas flow as long as possible before we kind of narrow it down to one thing we can actually execute. We find that leads to a lot more variety in our designs and solutions, and yeah, all around very much encouraging creativity wherever we can. That's where the magic happens.
Thank you so much for answering that. We have many new questions. So, when is the best time to apply for the design team? I think Joe already touched upon this a little bit, but how does that look like? When is the main recruitment time?
I guess I can just kind of run through it again. Roughly, it is predominantly September. So Vancouver campus has Imagine Day, which is the day after Labor Day. And that is kind of a time to go see all of the teams. They're all out there. Most of them have their projects out on Main Mall. And I assume Okanagan, I think you said Club Day, maybe something like that. Yeah. And so there you can kind of figure out what teams are out there and then proceed into kind of the application process and, depending on the team, interview process from there. And that's all going to happen over the first couple weeks of September. You can try to come in as an off-season hire if you email the team, state your case for why you should join. Sometimes, depending on whether we need someone in that area, that can be considered. But generally, it's a big movement in September, a small one in January, and a very, very small one on a rolling basis.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Would you recommend to join first-year design teams or adjust your rigor of courses first and join later? So, Ella, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally joined Sailbot my first term of my first year, and it worked out great for me. So we were at a point in the project where it was a lot of hands-on building and not so much, take-home design work. So I would come to the EDC on Saturday, get some hands-on experience, work all day, and then I'd go home, and that was kind of it. I was able to get my schoolwork done. So I would say it really depends on what team you're looking to join and where in the project they are. So anytime you're applying, just make sure if you get into an interview stage with that team that you talk to them and you're honest about what you may or may not be able to do with your course load. Sailbot takes a lot of first years, and that's always the first thing they ask is, am I going to have enough time outside of school? And my answer is always, as long as you can communicate your availability to us, we can make it work. So
that sounds great. Thank you so much, Ella. There's another question for you, though. As a mechanical engineering student and a member of the design team, is there any project focused on aerospace?
Absolutely. So Sailbot, I'm personally I'm the mechanical team lead. I'm also leading the wing sail team. So the wing sail is, at its center, it's a airplane wing vertical, and that's what's powering our boat. So that is all aerodynamic design, as is, the rudders and the keel. Anything under the water is also kind of aerodynamics. It's just under the water. So it's hydrodynamics. So it's very, very applicable. We have many members on our team who are very interested in the aerospace industry and find that their creative outlets and their design really relates to some of the projects that Sailbot's working on. And, you know, to speak to my knowledge on a few other teams, anytime that something's moving, there's usually part that's kind of hydrodynamic. So maybe Joe can speak to this, but I think there's definitely some aerodynamics components on Formula.
Yeah, absolutely. We have on our car right now, we're working on a front and a rear wing, and those are basically airplane wings flipped upside down so that as you drive forward and push air through them, you're sticking your car more to the ground so you get better traction. So we have a huge amount of computational fluid dynamics working on those. And then I think in the next couple of years, we're hoping to get a floor onto our car as well. But yeah, absolutely tons of aerodynamics there as well. And they're not represented here today, but there's also Aerodesign and UAS are both aviation-based teams that, of course, have tons of aerodynamic complexity to their projects as well.
That sounds great. Joe, while you're already answering questions, I think there's another question for you. Specific to UBC Formula Electric, what differs your team from Formula SAE? Which one would you suggest to first years looking to get into motorsports?
I am perhaps the most biased person to answer this question. Of course, you should join Formula Electric. But as far as what differs them, they're very similar in a lot of ways. The aerodynamics, the suspension look roughly the same. The chassis looks roughly the same. Where it really starts to diverge is the electronics workload. So the electronics for the electric race car are understandably a lot more complex. So if you're an electrical engineer, we're going to have a lot more electrical and software components to offer. Whereas the gas team, of course, we don't have anything on electric with an engine. So anything, you know, as far as tuning engines or that sort of dyno work is going to be a lot more applicable to the gasoline team. Those are kind of the two areas where we really diverge. But as far as like, you know, gearbox transmission work, they have a multi-stage transmission. We have a single fixed gear ratio transmission, but fundamentally still work with gears and gearboxes. So lots of similarities, a couple of differences. You're going to find whatever you want to work on, you're almost definitely going to find it on either team. But some focus a little bit more on one area or the other.
Is there a Formula SAE team in the Vancouver campus as well, or only in Okanagan?
Yeah, there's a gasoline team and an electric team.
Okay. And how many people are usually in design teams? So how many people are in your team, Joe?
Right now, we're up around, like, I think 80 people who actively do stuff and are really there to sink their teeth into the project. But that's definitely going to vary a lot by teams and by the team and how many sub projects that team has. I've heard of Vancouver teams getting up to like 140, 150 on the very high end if they have multiple sub projects, all the way down to like, I think 10, 15 people for the smaller ones. So you can find whatever size you want to find.
Julia, how many people are there in your design team?
Yeah, so for us, we our internal combustion team and our electric team is actually both under OK Motorsports, and so total of that, I believe, active members would be about 65, to about 30, just over 30 per car section, I guess, for IC and EV.
Okay, Curtis and Ella, do you also want to share how big your team is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sailbot is also 80 active members, but anytime you're joining a design team, you're not necessarily going to be working with all 80 people. So I'm on the mechanical team, which is about 21 people, and those are divided into smaller project teams of 7 people. So that's how Sailbot is structured. So even though we have 80 active members, you're going to be actively working with about 6 or 7 people really closely.
Okay, great.
We're kind of around the same mark as OK Motorsports. I think we kind of hover around the 60 to 70 active member mark this year, which was double last year. So that was really exciting. We plan to expand that a little bit more with a new project next year as well. But again, it's separated into that we have 3 sub-projects. So on our solar decathlon team, which focuses on net zero housing, there's 35 to 40. And then our solar bench project is around 10. And then we also have campus sustainability initiatives, which is less engineering focused, kind of open to everybody. And that was another, I don't know, I guess 15 to 20 people, something like that.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Ella, you talked about how you hire a lot of first years in your team. So, do first years usually contribute much to a design team, or is it more of a learning experience when you start out?
I would say it's a combination, and it completely depends on what stage of the project you're at. I find that first years are often able to hit the ground running when we're building and constructing because, I find people who are coming in as first year engineers have a little bit of hands-on experience to work off of, so it's often easier to get going. When we're in the design stage, it's a little bit slower, just kind of get everyone up to speed and, into the design process flow. But for me personally, my team, I like to divide the projects into smaller components that are really accessible for first year students. So even if you're a little bit new to the design process, or you're just learning about it in class, you're kind of able to follow along in class, take what you learn and apply it to the project that we've set you on. But I've also had it in situations where I have a first year working with an upper year who might be working on a more complex project, so it is very much a learning experience. But on Sailbot, you're always going to have a project that you can work on at your skill level. We're usually able to accommodate, all levels of knowledge and experience.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. So we have some questions coming in related to the selection process. So let's talk about that again. So how is the selection process for design teams? I think a lot of new people have joined us. So let's talk about that again. Who wants to take that question?
I can run through it again unless anyone else wants to jump in. Yeah.
I have kind of a
Go
contrasting one after you're done, if you want to start, and then I can show the other side of it.
Sure. So it's going to vary a lot by team. Some just accept everyone who walks in the door. Some teams have just a technical application, and some teams also add an interview stage onto that. So it totally depends on how competitive the team is and how big the team is. As for kind of what those teams are looking for, almost universally, we do not care as much about prior knowledge. It's a lot more about problem-solving skills and kind of just your ability to work through problems. So honestly, your skill at Google is your most valuable asset coming in the door, because it's really, really easy for us to teach you what a capacitor is, what a gear is. It's really, really difficult for us to teach you how to solve a problem. So anything you can show to illustrate your skills in those areas is absolutely the most valuable thing, in my opinion. It's working with my team.
We also have another question. How many people will be selected for a design team that they have applied for in September? So what is the ratio of the number of people you accept to the people you don't?
For us, we probably accept around 70% of the ones who apply for our official positions. It really depends. Each position kind of has varying levels of interest. But yeah, usually around that mark.
Okay, Joe, do you want to answer that too?
Sure. If we look at applications as a whole, I think we're pretty low. We're around 15% acceptance. Very competitive. That number goes up if you're a first year. I'd put that closer to 30 to 40%, something like that. Second year is also pretty high. It's almost impossible to get on if you're a third, fourth, or fifth year unless you've done a really cool internship. So the other thing I'd add is don't let that number discourage you, because if you can bring us a really good application, obviously that's way more important than just, we're not picking people out of a hat, right? But it is a competitive process, unfortunately, because we can't have 300 people working on one car. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Thank you so much. What are design team competitions like, if anyone has participated in one? Who wants to take that question?
I've been to 2, so I can take that. It's Probably the hardest week of my life, but it's also the most fun because nothing's working quite as well as you want it to, and obviously your project has to work, in that moment. But it's so much fun because you're meeting, at least for the Formula Electric competition, about 80 other teams from all across, certainly the continent. There's a few from South America as well, who are all working in a very similar project. They've all solved it in vastly different ways. So comparing notes with all of probably the most like-minded people you're ever going to meet is incredibly cool. You get incredibly close with the rest of your team. But yeah, it's all with the undertone of trying to make your car work in the 11th hour, because inevitably something's going to go wrong. So it's a lot of fun. It's really, really hard, but it's a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for answering that. That sounded very exciting. What design team is most applicable for engineering physics students? I have personal opinions on this too. I think any student from any major can go into any design team as per their interest. But does anyone want to elaborate on that?
I'm in engineering physics, so I might be able to take this one. I do strongly agree that you can go into any team you want to. We have chemical engineers doing mechanical engineering, so even if you're a specific major rather than kind of a jack of all trades major, you can still join whatever you want. But I guess for engineering physics, if you're really looking for that pure physics angle, I think the rocketry team's pretty good for stuff like that. UBC Rocket, I think there's Thunderbird Aerospace, I think it's also called, is another similar one. But I don't know, I'm struggling to find pure physics teams. I think you really just want to find an applied situation, whether that be a race car or a sustainability initiative or an airplane or whatever, and find one of those, because they all can have pure physics applied to them. And then so find the one that most interests you and then apply the pure physics there, because basically every team needs that. Our team has a pretty high content of engineering physics. I think we're around 20-25%, something like that. But you can make almost any team work. So find the project that interests you and the physics will come.
Thank you so much for answering that, Joe. Ella, can you answer this question for us? How do you set and meet goals in design teams? Is it very self-directed? Does it depend on whether a competition is involved?
Absolutely. So yeah, and this is going to depend a lot from team to team. Sailbot, we used to be involved in the International Robotics Sailing competition, but now we're no longer doing that. So we're not on a competition timeline scale, but we do have funding deadlines. So in order to get money, we promise people that we'll have something built by the end of June, and then we have to build it. So even if we're not on a competition timeline, we still have deadlines to meet, and those are kind of set top down. So all of your leads will meet and decide what deliverables are going to happen at what time. And then your project leads are going to be setting the smaller, more, this component done by this time kind of deadlines. But yeah, sorry, is there any other part to that?
No, that sounds good. Thank you so much for answering that. Unfortunately, we're about to reach the end of our session. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences with us. It's great to hear how being a part of a design team has impacted your student experience. And thank you to our current students and attendees for sharing their insights and experiences. And we're going to conclude this session now.